Wednesday afternoon, Phil Williams here with you on 5 Live, 6 minutes past 2. Thanks for joining us. One of the things the first two guests on the show today have in common, that's Neil McCormick, the Telegraph's music columnist, and Sean Keaveney, the Six Music breakfast presenter, is that they were both in bands that broke up just when they're on the cusp of massive things. Neil's misfortune is that his group hit the Belfast music scene at the same time as U2. It should have been Dublin, shouldn't it? Dublin. Yeah, not Belfast, the Dublin music scene. And in Sean's case, it was quite a sad tale, really. The guitarist was made to resign by his parents after doing badly in his mock O-levels. So the question I'd like you to answer this afternoon whilst we chat is, why did your band split up? You don't look at me like that. I know you've been in one. So why did it split up? 85058 for your text, please. Email me, phil@bbc.co.uk. Good afternoon, Neil.
Afternoon.
Is it really as simple as being around at the same time as you two?
No, it's it's never as simple as that. It's not as simple. You know, I went to school with you two, and so we were in the same class together.
Were you pals?
We were pals. We still are pals. But and we formed groups together, really. And my brother, who was in my group, started out as a guitarist in their group. And we set off with sort of shared ambitions to conquer the world. Is this
Frankie Corpse and the Undertakers?
Yeah, we had Frankie Corpse and the Undertakers. I was just one of the Undertakers then, with the terrible punk name Kneel Down. And we sort of all set off together with kind of shared ambitions. And you know, I was really a great bullshit artist, and I was really intent on where I was going and what I was going to achieve, and I talked a great game, and we had good bands, but we were, they you know, you two just left everything in their wake. You could kind of tell that was happening, although it took me 13 years to truly accept that they were at Wembley Stadium and we were still playing Wembley Coach and Horses.
Listen, I do need to remind you it's 8 minutes past 2, so we just need to watch some of the words that you would use to describe your formative years. Apologies from us to you if you were offended by that. So that's kind of the journey too. I know you wrote a YouTube book in 2007, so I know you're still close to those guys. But one of the things that struck me was I went to Dublin probably about 5 years ago now to interview Bono. He'd just done the soundtrack to Peter and the Wolf, and everyone first of all, with an English accent, they ask you why you're there. You know, they know that you're a visitor pretty much. So from every taxi driver to barman to whoever I met, you know, what you're doing in Dublin, what brings you to Dublin? I said, I'm here to interview Bono for the BBC. And at that point, everyone without fail, Neil, said, I know Bono. I was at school with Bono. I did this with Bono. I did that with Bono. Everyone claims to know him. And the best story was the cab driver who says to me, I was at school with Bono. He said, and then I saw him recently in a bar. And I think it was the bar at the Clarence. Is that his hotel, the Clarence? Yeah. He said, and then I ended up in the toilet with him at the same time. He said, and I noticed that he couldn't go. He said, and I couldn't help myself. I turned to him and I said, stage fright, Bono.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's an apocryphal tale. It did actually happen, I believe, backstage at RTE, but a lot of people have claimed credit for it. Yeah, you know, you two are very present in the city of Dublin, and Bono is a very gregarious character, and it's a strange thing that you know, I've known him since I was 14.
Did you know him as Paul?
I knew him as Paul. It took me a while to accept the name Bono. Or the name U2. I just think that was a rubbish band name. And I used to tell him that.
When did he stop being Paul to you? Because he's realised Paul Hewson, if you didn't know.
He had this kind of gang called Lipton Village, and they all had adopted these names. It was Gavin Friday and Dave Id and Googie. And they called each other by these nicknames. But when I suppose when his girlfriend, who's now his wife, started calling him Bono, you kind of have to fall in with it. And there was a real shift, because I just thought it was a ridiculous name. The hardest one was the Edge. You know, it was only when I've always known him as Dave, and when I wrote their autobiography. You know, I put it together, and when I was doing that, I suddenly thought, I said, you know, would you prefer if I called you Dave or the Edge? And he said, well, you know, pretty much everyone calls me the Edge now, apart from my parents and immigration. So I thought, well, I'll have to fall in line.
And do you know, has Bono got Bono on his passport, or is it Paul Hewson?
I believe he still has his original name on his passport, although I bet he doesn't have to use it. I once travelled through immigration with Bono and Bob Geldof on the way to Rome to visit the Pope, which is the kind of thing you do when you're hanging out with those guys. And I did notice that they got swept through with nobody looking at their documentation. Their faces are their passports.
Yeah. Neil's here because a few years ago he wrote a book which is called I Was Bono's Doppelganger. It's been turned into a film. I think filming's finished. They're in post-production now.
It's done.
It's done. It's ready to go. And it's released in the UK on the 1st of April this year. So it's a few months off yet. And, I mean, of course, we didn't know this. I was saying to Gabby, we didn't know this when we asked you to come on, but it will appear that will be Pete Postlethwaite's last appearance on screen.
It is his last role. Pete was a great friend of the director Nick Ham, and was really the first name actor, and in some ways the only name actor, signed on to appear in the film. And, you know, films, I'll tell you, that film took 7 years from selling the rights to actually getting made. 7 long years in which it's very, very hard business. It's even worse than the music business, I realised.
Did you have to go to Cannes with the producers?
I didn't get to go. We didn't do Cannes. We did.
The producers did Cannes to sell it around the world.
Yeah, they don't send me. I don't get to go to any of the glamorous places. I spent a few days in Belfast. But Pete signed on early because he's a friend and he liked the script. It's a very funny script, as you said, by Clement and Lafrene. And he was going to play the Dublin gangster in the film, which takes large liberties with the book. I did know a Dublin gangster, he's taken a large role as the backer of my band. He's taken a larger role as fictionalized in the way of filming. And you know, you could see Pete Postlethwaite as a Dublin gangster, but he got ill in the film, though, which takes large liberties with the book. I did know a Dublin gangster, but he's taken a larger role as the backer of my band as these things become fictionalized in the way of filming. And you know, you could see Pete Postlethwaite as a Dublin gangster, but he got ill during the long period of the film being made, and we knew he'd been diagnosed with cancer, but he was insistent that he still wanted to be in the film, but he couldn't really take that role, which was a very energetic and demanding role. So they changed over to the gay landlord. And that just shows you what kind of amazing actor he is. So he's gone from the Dublin gangster to the gay English landlord. And you know, he was going through chemo, and he was, you know, bald, and yet he gives the most beautiful performance, and they rewrote it for him. So it's actually a really poignant performance. We all knew that he was of very ill health. He gets to make a kind of a speech to the characters playing myself and my brother about going on in the world and enjoying ourselves, which resonated at the time and is now going to resonate even more. It's a very lovely performance.
We couldn't find any clips for you, but what we have found for you is the first international trailer for this film. So this is Killing Bono. It's out on the 1st of April here in the UK. Have a listen to this.
In 1976, the McCormick brothers
We're going to be the next big thing.
started the second best band
Don't move me, I want to eat him!
in Dublin.
He's super!
But as they got better, the other band
See you on top of the pops, boys.
always had the edge.
You're looking at you two. You too.
It sounds like a bleeding submarine.
Hence your dislike of the name. I mean, it does sound a lot of fun. Dick Clement and Ian Lafrene, you mentioned, who've written the script. I mean, I think they're brilliant. They go back as far as the Likely Lads, don't they?
Yeah.
And then Porridge, Our Feeder's Name Pet. The Bank Job I really enjoyed with Jason Statham, which was based on true events. And I didn't realise that they had a hand with Roddy Doyle in The Commitments, which is my favourite film about music and about Jimmy Rabbit trying to put this band together in Dublin in 1990.
Well, you'll probably enjoy Killing Bono then, because I think The Commitments was the kind of model for it. You know, it's a film about ordinary rock and roll. It's got the kind of U2 thing as a kind of background comedy, a contrast for what's going on, but it's about the real struggles that so many people have been in bands, and you know, the world is full of more people who fail at their ambitions than achieve them. That's the human story. That's what I realised when I wrote the book. The story I had to tell was a story about an ordinary story about being a loser and coming to terms with kind of losing out in your dreams and accepting wherever you are. And this is I am being immortalised finally in film as one of the world's complete and utter losers.
You sound quite hard on yourself for it, you know, especially in some of the stuff I've written, some of the interviews you've given. Is this all tongue-in-cheek? Because you're not really a loser, are you? You've had a very successful career as a music journalist.
You know, success is is relative. It's what was your dream in your head? What did you think? I have an accidental career as a journalist. It was never my intention to be a journalist. It was certainly not my intention to be a music critic, which which I tried to avoid even after the band broke up and I became a journalist. I did 5 years of other journalism before somebody said, "Oh, he used to be a musician, and he's a journalist. We could offer him this." And they made me an offer. The Telegraph made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
Gamekeeper?
Well, there's the idea that musicians have that all rock critics are failed musicians, and I sort of embodied that with all the bitterness that
that brings with it.
That brings with it. You know, so writing the book was about writing off those dreams. And yes, you know, I'm nearly 50 years old. I have long since come to terms with my place in life, and I don't measure it by those achievements, but you know, I would in my school, in my class, in my group of friends, I would be a very successful person with a glamorous kind of life if it hadn't been for the fact that I was in school with Bono. And you know, it doesn't matter what story you tell, there's always a better one. And I'm always just outside. You know, we went to see the Pope with Bob Geldof. And Bono and Bob got swept into the room, and I was held outside by one of the Pope's guards. That's kind of the story of my life, being just outside the
on
cordon,
the edge, teetering away. Listen, Neil McCormick's here, Telegraph music columnist. The book is called I Was Bono's Doppelganger. It's been turned into a film, which is called Killing Bono, and that will be out on the 1st of April. We'll chat some more with Neil after a travel update. If you've been